Hello folks, this is Alex from the Timelapse Guy, and in this video I will show you how I edited last video's sunset timelapse from this raw sequence into this epic timelapse. Welcome again to this timelapse editing session. First of all, I'd like to introduce you to the two software tools I'm using because I'm always using the same two software. So it's the main color correction is happening in Adobe Lightroom, and then I'm using LRTimelapse, which is a time-lapse renderer, which is a powerful tool where you can create keyframes, and then you only edit those keyframes back in Lightroom. Then you go back into LRTimelapse again. LRTimelapse is doing the auto transition, so all the pictures have the same color, and it creates a transition between the keyframes, so the whole shot looks more or less created the same then. So first of all, I load those two software tools. So Lightroom's already popped up in the background, but we need LRTimelapse first. Okay, so this is the workbench of LRTimelapse. There's different workflows you can choose here. So for our purposes, the basic workflow will do the job. So on the left side here is your folder structure. So the shot we took last week with the sunset is saved here. And as I was shooting in RAW with the GoPro, there's a JPEG sequence and a RAW sequence as well. This is the number of photos we took, so there's a difference in 10 photos because I changed the camera orientation after 10 photos once again, so these photos are already deleted here, and in the second sequence they're in, but I will delete them soon. So by clicking on here, LRTimelapse is loading the whole sequence. It's loading all the metadata and files, and as you can see, it's telling you what camera settings you were using. So it's telling you the interval between the photos. So this is somehow between 4 to 6 seconds. Actually, I was using 5 seconds, so maybe the GoPro is not as accurate as it should be. The aperture of the GoPro is always the same. It's a 2.8 aperture. The shutter speed is changing a little bit because in the beginning there was more sunlight, and in the range of the 100 ISO limit, it's able to change the shutter speed to 1/8 in the end. Then you can see the pixel here and some exposure data, and now it's calculating, or it's loading all the information in here. And on the top left corner you can see by this blue line continuing that the sequence is processed by the program. So once LRTimelapse loaded the whole sequence and processed all the pictures, let's make this a little bit larger, you can see with this blue line the exposure during the sequence. So we start at a real high point, so these are the first 10 pictures here, and then I changed the camera angle again. So as you can see, if we check this arrow, you can see after 10 pictures the angle changes. So I'm going to delete the first 10 pictures, and I can just do this in LRTimelapse. So I just mark them, and then I hit backspace, and then I tell him to delete everything. So now we don't have this exposure jump here anymore. So as you can see here, we have a descending exposure line, and this is because we set the ISO max to 100, so the shot gets darker in the end. And we can hit the play button here, and then we have a little preview of the raw data. You can see the clouds wandering, and the whole shot is moving because I was using a slider. So if you haven't seen my last video where I took this sequence, just go and check out. I will link you the video in the description. So if we've done this, we go to the keyframe wizard, and the keyframes you can see, let's put some more in so you can see them more easily. So these are these blue rectangles here. So we don't need that many rectangles. Depending on this exposure line, you need like less than 5. So I would say for this maybe 3 or 4. So just to make sure, we go with 4. Okay, and we are still in the basic workflow. That was wrong here. Now if we save them, these 4 keyframes are saved in the metadata. And that's all we need to do for the moment in LRTimelapse. Now we take this sign here, drag it to Lightroom. So you can just simply take it and go with it into Lightroom. Then the import dialog opens where the whole sequence is shown again. And then we just hit import and Lightroom is now loading all the photos. And yeah, we're having around about 500 photos, so we really don't want to edit every single photo. So what we're doing now is we choose in the lower right corner here in the filter mode, we just let Lightroom show us every keyframe. So this is the keyframes we just created in LRTimelapse, and these keyframes are marked with these 4 stars. So we marked the first keyframe, and now we hit the develop button where we can color grade our picture. So from now on, there's no rule for editing photos. So you just need to try those sliders here and look what's looking best. But I will show you my editing process for these pictures. But as I said, this is just no rule or something, because every picture is different. So you can't just say, okay, I'm using my as always settings. This is not working. So you have to do this every time again, and you're creating a feeling for this. So for example, I could change the color temperature to this yellow side, and then it's going yellow, so the whole shot looks warmer now. But maybe I like a colder look, so this is just depending on your personal preferences. Yeah, so I think I go with this. For the teint, I think if you go with green, this is really not looking good in a sunset. So I think I changed this to a slight purple look. Yeah, just to make sure it's not too much. And we can change this afterwards if the colors go too crazy, if I change the saturation later. So I changed the contrast a lot, and if you change the contrast, the whole picture gets a little bit darker, so that's why I need to higher the exposure a little bit. If you want the clouds to be more visible, you need to lower the highlights, but you should not go to the min or max settings, because in my opinion, then somehow the realism of the picture is disappearing, because then sometimes there's like small there's small lines around the clouds appearing, and we don't want this effect to happen. The shadows. So I don't want the foreground to be too visible, but a little bit more as it was in the beginning. So I think I go with just a little bit lighting up the shadows, and for the whites it's the same. So if you darken them, you can see the clouds clearer. So for the next 5 sliders, you need to really take care, because you can totally ruin your shots with those. So because if you max or minimize them too hard, the appearance of your whole shot changes. So for example, if I go with the texture and go to a very high level, you can see every single line is now super sharp, and maybe you like the looks of it, but I really don't like it. And for example, if you go with the texture reload, this is all blurred out, and yeah, it looks like a photo from 2004. So I think if you need to really take care with those sliders. So for example, the clarity as well, it could be a very cool and dramatic effect if you go for very high clarity. Yeah, this is as well depending on your personal preferences, but I think you really need to take care with those sliders. And the dehaze as well, it's so this looks somehow cool, but this does really not look realistic in any way. So yeah, you really need to make sure that you don't exaggerate those sliders. And for the vibrance, this is changing the color now. So yeah, I think this is like just way too much, just a little bit. And saturation the same. So you can totally oversaturate your shot with this, depending on your preferences. So when you are editing your shot and you would like to check the before and after look of your color gradings, you can go into this bottom left buttons here. So by clicking this button, you can see a side-by-side picture of the before and after. And yeah, by clicking it again, you can change through these appearances. So, but I think with this you can see that we did not exaggerate the editing here. So the colors still look realistic, and I think I just made colors which were there in realism. So by pressing this button again, you go back to your editing. So now we have the tone curve. With the tone curve, we can just change the highlights, lights, darks. So it's basically just a tool for changing the luminance of your picture. So by lowering it, we maybe can see more in very bright areas. So but I think I maybe go with this. And again, here by lowering this, you can get the clouds in the very bright areas a little bit more visible. Okay, now we got some very funny sliders. So with these sliders, we can change the appearance of our colors as well. So for example, the hues, by clicking this little button here, we can just go then into our picture and, for example, put very strange colors in our sky. So it actually, how it works, by clicking on the color, Lightroom just checks all the colors. So it's like masking only the color then with the changing color. So for example, if I press on the blue button, only the blue tones changes. Or if I go to green, the green tones as well change a little bit. But so we go for the blue tone maybe to a little darker blue tone, like this. And for this orange color of our sunset, we maybe go to a little more orange tone. I think for the grass we actually could, this is too much, so like this. And we can do the same with the saturation. So for example, if I press blue again, it's oversaturating the blue tones. Yeah, but this tool is very cool for only changing single colors in your shot. Okay, so let's check before and after again. So we put a lot of colors in there now and a lot of sharpness. Yeah, but I really like the looks of it. And as we can see here, by getting a little bit closer, this is very noisy. So because the GoPro has a very small sensor and there's not that much light hitting the sensor, so we get into noisy pictures extremely fast. And this is happening during night lapses even more. So for this, there's a slider as well. We can put in the noise reduction. This is actually smoothing out the picture. As you can see, I applied 75. Now it's super smooth, but actually we lost a lot of sharpness in our shot. So you can't overuse this slider. So maybe I always use this just a little bit, and by moving this detail slider, you can keep a lot of detail and still lose a lot of noise in your shot. So this is it for the basic color grading options. What we can do now is to use those graduated filters. There's 4 graduated sliders by default, and what they do is they actually changing either the picture above the slider or below the slider, and in between those 3 white lines there is a smooth transition. So for example, if I go with a lower exposure in the top, you can see the exposure in the top now changed a lot, and now I can drag it to the bottom, and by widening the whole filter you can get a smoother transition. So for the sky, I think I'm putting on a graduated filter which is somehow stopping at the horizon, more or less, because the GoPro has a fisheye. The horizon is not a flat line but a curve, and then I'm putting on a little bit more clarity there. Okay, and for example, for the bottom, I maybe change the green tone of the grass. So we need to take care that we're not using it too much, because we got the river there as well and we don't want to green out the river. So I think now we're just right at the border where it starts to look unrealistic. So I think I should not do any more editing with this photo. And what you can do now is to copy all the changes you did to this picture, and then just go to the next picture, to the next keyframe, and paste everything. So now you can see your settings from the first picture in the next keyframe, which is like 125 pictures further in the time-lapse sequence. So now we need to make sure that we still like the editing we did. I think it's a little bit too dark, the whole shot, so I need to put a little more exposure in there, but not too much, like this. Copy again. Usually I don't need to make a lot of changes while I'm pasting the settings in here. So usually it's if you do it once in the first shot and go with the next shots, it's usually just a little bit of editing the exposure or the contrast, because these pictures maybe get a little bit too dark. Most of the work is done with the first picture. So now you can see the blue color of the sky is getting a little bit out of hand with these next pictures. So this is way too blue in my opinion. So I'm going to the second keyframe where this first appears and go into the graduated filters where I put the blue color in and just take it out a little bit. By pressing G, you can see the editing, or you can see the pictures next to each other. So let's zoom in a bit, and now we can see, I think we got like a very smooth color changing from the first picture to the last picture, and really like this. So we choose all the 4 keyframes and pressing Command S, or go to metadata and save metadata to files. And what we do now is we head back into LRTimelapse, and in LRTimelapse we press the reload button, and what it's doing now, it's reading the metadata from the keyframes. So you can see the keyframes now move. We only changed the 4 keyframes, and now the power of LRTimelapse is that you can get a transition between those 4 pictures. So I hit the auto transition. Usually I do it like 3 times or 4 times. I don't know if this is beneficial, but I think I get a smoother transition than if it's calculated more than once. Now we can add a deflicker filter, so to make sure that we really don't have deflickering there, and then we save everything, and that's it. What we're doing now in LRTimelapse. Now we have to head back into Lightroom again and get back to the filtering options and put in the full sequence again. And what we're doing now is we choose the whole sequence, and then we tell Lightroom to read out the metadata. So what LRTimelapse did was to changing the metadata of all the photos based on the transition which it calculated between our keyframes. And now if we read out the metadata, Lightroom knows how to edit all the pictures in between the keyframes. As you can see now, it's it's changing all the unedited photos. So once Lightroom has done this, we can export our sequence. To export it, we need to hit the folder where our sequence is saved. We need to choose the whole sequence, and then we hit export, and then the LRTimelapse export dialog opens. So we want to export for LRTimelapse. We want to export for LRTimelapse JPEG 4K or JPEG original. So I'm going for original because then I'm not using any resolution, because we got 4000 times 3000 here. I don't need to tell anything more about this. Now we need to export it, and this takes quite a while. So once Lightroom finished all the editing, we need to go back into LRTimelapse again, and there we got the final time-lapse rendering option. What you can do here is change between output sizes, frame rate, high quality. I don't think I ever used very high or ultra high, because I'm super pleased with the output of the high quality. What you can do here is to add motion blur to the shot. You can hit render video. Yeah, this takes a little while as well, but not as long as the rendering from Lightroom. So once it's finished, it's opening up in your folder structure. So for me, this is my Lightroom export folder, and there you can have a glimpse at, there it's actually finished. And here we have a glimpse at the finished time-lapse sequence. So that's it for today's video. I hope you liked it. Comments and questions down below the description. Check out the description for some more information about my gear. Check out my last video if you haven't seen how I took this sequence we edited today. And I hope I see you in the next one.